Morning everybody, hope you had a nice weekend. Right now we're looking at the market via the SPYs on a 30-minute chart, and what we can see is we spent the last couple of days after this nice uptrend here from 129 consolidating between 131 and about 131.60. So far in the pre-market we've drifted a little bit back inside of this consolidation range. Earlier we were above it. So as the market opens, what I want to see is what happens at that 131.60. Do we move back above it and start pushing to 132? If we were holding below, then we could come right back to the bottom of this consolidation, which takes us to 131. Maybe another tight consolidation today. We've certainly been having our share of very tight consolidations over the last month or so. Pretty light on the fresh news. We'll go over a few things. Natural gas is in play today. That's something that people have been looking for at the bottom over the last year, but there's actually some unusual activity today. I don't remember the last time I traded. It's probably been a few years, but just like SLV caught my attention last spring, this initial move in natural gas has caught my attention. Here it is right here. Let's go to the longer term. People were looking for it at the bottom right here around 770. Then I think right below the 7, around 680. Look at the pickup in volume here over the last couple of weeks. Volume started to get a little bit nutty. If we zoom in on the last 5 days, you can see today just big move here from 5 up to 5.5, and some pretty good volume over the last on Thursday and Friday. Not going to trade UNG. Going to take a look at SWN, which is actually something we looked at last week. Actually on Friday I think we were looking at it on the short side below $29, and you can see this has moved very quickly above 30. Very spotty though volume in the pre-market. If we zoom in on it, you can see it hasn't really done much volume, but it's worked its way up from 30 to almost $31 a share. Looking at the longer term, I think 32. If this move in natural gas sustains, $32 would be a reasonable target for SWN over the next day or two. Something just from beyond trading it today, and I'll draw a parallel to NFLX, which was a stock that got crushed from 300 all the way down to the 60s. When something bottoms, when it's been crushed and starts to move back up, and then starts to have that second move, a lot of times you get people shorting because they have imprinted in their brain how weak something's been for so long, and it creates a really good opportunity on the long side. We haven't seen that yet, obviously. Natural gas, this is just the first move. But in the coming days, if we can see pullbacks and higher lows, and it has another up move and starts moving higher above $6 UNG, that there's going to be some nice squeezes in some of these natural gas stocks. So even if you're not making money in them today and you miss the move or you don't trade it the way you want, this is something that you're going to want to keep an eye on and see what this does in the coming days and weeks. Next one I wanted to take a look at. I'm just going the order I have them on here. Oh shoot, all my stuff got erased. Okay. Go to my notes. HAL reported. Here's the longer term on this one. Let's go to the 10-day, 30-minute. Here's the 10-day, 30-minute. They reported the initial reaction was up here above 36.5, but as HAL commonly does in the pre-market, it starts one direction then goes in the other. I believe 35.60 or so is the level I was going to look to see if it's supported, and it's actually below there right now. Let's zoom in on today's pre-market action. And yeah, this was my level in pre-market, and it's holding below there now, so I'm looking at trading it on the short side. Decent volume. Let's see, pre-market volume is over 300,000 shares, so that's pretty good. So if I were trading right now, I'd be watching to see if it holds below this 35.60 to continue to trade it on the short side. And if it gets back above there, then this 36 is the level. This is a stock that has a tendency to trade at the holes and the halves with a lot of orders. Let me zoom right back out to the 1 month. Give us a downside. We can see it gapped from this 35 here on January 19th. So if it continues to show the weakness in the pre-market, that's kind of my downside. I'd look for the 35 level on that one. I wanted to bring up RIM. The RIM trade, most of it, or at least the entry, happened already in the pre-market. It's one of the better setups I've seen in a while. And what we want to talk about with RIM is this idea that the market and stocks, it's different than politics. You don't get to just say something or do something and show some nice and actually get your stock to actually follow through. You actually need some substance. So at first glance, they fired the two CEOs, co-CEOs resigned. They put somebody in place, and I guess the initial pop was people thought maybe they'd be more likely to get sold. But the reality is a company's more likely to get sold if they have something people want to buy. And so if you were in here early this morning, there was an opportunity to short it close to the high from January 17th, up at 18. A lot of this is played out already. It's come off more than 1.5 points. But this is something that the reality of the situation is going much lower than where it is trading right now. And today might be actually the catalyst where people tried to buy a little bit in the pre-market. They're crushing it. And if it gets below $16 a share, it's going to get back to 15 in a hurry. And when people realize that no one's going to buy them, or at least buy the company as a whole, maybe they'll buy some of their intellectual property, that could be right back down to $12 a share very quickly. So there was a nice entry from an intraday swing and a multi-day swing in the pre-market already. I don't see it really getting up anywhere close to those levels again. But certainly if we have some type of retracement, we can see, let's zoom in on the 3-minute on this, we can see that pretty much since it got below 17.5, it's been going lower, a little bit more than a point at this point. 16 is the next support we've seen. We go to the 1 month on this one, right there. So you can see back here on January 13th, the low was 16.02. On the 17th, 16.08, and that looks to be where it's heading right now. It's possible it could base there and maybe pop back up to $16.5 to $17. But again, from a bigger picture perspective, the stock is going to melt down to lower prices eventually. And we had a nice entry in the pre-market. And if it consolidates above 16 and breaks below today, that could be another nice entry for you on the short side. I think that covers the stuff with fresh news I wanted to hit. Why don't we go to second day and technical plays? And I'm just going to start, usually I go with second days, but I'm going to start with a technical play because a lot of these technical ideas that come on the morning idea sheet, what you really want to do is use the tools at your disposal on the desk to help you trade those. And if you have a technical setup, you want to get confirmation by that stock appearing on the radar as well. So something like SNDK, we can see it's very strong, big picture. We're looking at the weekly right now. We can see 53.5 is where it topped out back on January 10th. Excuse me, this is the daily, right? That's actually the daily. I don't know why the weekly is not changing. Oh, yes, it is. This is the weekly. I'm sorry. So at the beginning of last year, actually peaked out at 53.5 and then peaked out there October 24th. What you'd want to see is if buying comes in here, it gets above $52.5, $53. You want to see that show up on the in-play ranking, on the radar. You want to see it maybe on the opening range or even on the strong list. When you start to see it on the radar and you know it's a good technical setup, that's where you're going to be aggressive. If you have these good technical setups and they're not really showing up on the radar, there's something I'd maybe take a look at, but not something I'd really put a lot of emphasis on or trade with any sort of size. So let's go to second day stuff. And again, all of my game plan stuff was erased inadvertently, so I'm doing a lot of this on memory. COF, here's the 3-day on this, had this initial negative reaction on earnings. Came back a little bit, but as long as it's below $46 a share, I want to take a look at this one on the short side. And then confirmation would be below this 45.70, 45.65. Especially below 45.65, I'd really be focused in and honed in on the short. And then we want to see what we can see at this 45 level. It came back down here. We're looking at the 15-minute. Touched it a bunch of times, kept on getting rejected. There was clearly buyers at the 45. But again, below this consolidation here, looking to trade it on the short and see what happens at the 45 level. The next one I want to take a look at is WLT. Very strong on Friday. Want to watch this 66.5. You can see spent a lot of time being rejected there all day on Friday. Was gapping a little bit on light volume in the pre-market above there, but so far in the pre-market has come back down below. So use the 66.5 as an inflection today, as well as this pullback low in the afternoon of 65.5. But overall, had a very nice drive on Friday from 62.5 up to 66.5, and if it is holding above that 66.5 level, look for some continuation on the long side. The next stock is IBM. Had a very positive reaction to earnings Thursday after the close. As the market opened on Friday, dipped very briefly below 185, but then drove up to 187 and then drifted higher for the rest of the afternoon. If I were looking for possible entry points on this one today, I'd be looking at around this 187.70, actually where it is right here in the pre-market. Want to see if it's supporting above there, then starts to support above 188. I continue to trade it on the long side from there. And also on this one, on the big picture perspective, had this little mini downtrend, which was broken. Overall is a strong stock though, and if it's above 188, I'd be looking for it to move up to back to $190 a share. Let me go to the morning ideas. There's a couple of things that I missed that people put on here. Yeah, I did want to actually bring up Apple. That was an unusual trade. I think they're reporting after the close tomorrow. Very unusual for a buyer to identify themselves as clearly as they did on, a seller on Friday, 425, 424.5, and then at 424. I think a lot of people did a good job of staying in for 2 or 3 points into this down move with 20 cents of risk. Don't know if the sellers will still be here again today. You can see in the pre-market it has already actually touched that 424 where people were getting short on Friday, and has come off about 1.5 points. So there was a nice pre-market trade. More and more we're seeing some of these best entries in the pre-market. But let's watch that again if it pops up there again today. And the other big levels to watch is going to be around that 420. Big whole number divisible by 10, and should be fairly in play until the earnings after the close tomorrow. And then there was one actually more fresh thing that I forgot to mention. PAAS was doing a takeover, and here's a 6-month chart on it. They're buying a company that's about 40% of their market cap, so it should have an impact on their share price. You can see bigger picture and a downtrend here. I just popped back up to the 25 area and failed there. We show this little bit of an uptrend it was developing with this pre-market. This gap down from 24.72 to 23.60 is below. Let's watch and see if it holds below 24 on the open. Certainly this 23 is where it broke out from on January 11th, so definitely some downside there. Zoom in on the pre-market on this one. It looks like all the volume, and it's very light volume, looks to have done maybe 20,000 shares, is at this 23.60 right here. So on the open, I'm going to watch to see if it actually starts to hold below that level, and then continue downside for $23 a share. Fairly large takeover for them based on the size of their market cap, so it could have a decent size negative reaction there. I'm going to check back in with SWN, see what that's doing. It's starting to move sideways here a little bit at 30.80, so I'm going to watch that on the open, see if it supports above there for a little bit of a continuation. And on the pullback 30.60 to 30.50 seems like a spot where there might be some nibbling, and this would probably be the stock that I'm going to look at on the open. Checking back in with the SPYs. SPYs pretty much just hanging out in a sideways action right at this 130.150, and if it's holding below there right on the open, look for a move down to 131 or so. Be patient. This 9:30 to 9:45 has been a very bad risk reward time to trade over the last few months. Haven't seen really evidence of people making money there. Most of your good entries are really coming in the pre-market or after 9:45 or even 10 o'clock. So be patient. Good luck today, everybody. That's it.